Welcome to the conclusion paragraph mini lesson. Here's what you're trying to do in a conclusion paragraph. You are trying to summarize how you persuaded or explained your thesis statement to your reader. You're closing out your essay, and you're wrapping up your main point, which is your thesis statement and main reasons, in 1 to 2 sentences. The length will be very similar to your introduction paragraph. It'll be about 3 to 5 sentences. So just like with your intro, you are previewing what you're going to talk about. Your conclusion is wrapping everything up. Here's the conclusion paragraph formula. When you're closing out an essay, you will need the following: a transition word or phrase, or it can also be called a conclusion signal word. So you'll need something like in conclusion, in the end, therefore, to summarize, to sum up, overall, in the end, and in short. You need to restate what is sometimes called your roadmap sentence, but it's really just your thesis statement and your main reasons. And you also need what's called a zinger. This is very similar to a hook statement, which draws your reader in, except this time it hits your main point home. So it leaves them thinking about something that might be something new that you did not talk about in your essay. This is where you can acknowledge the other side of your argument or another point that you could have made in your essay. You don't want to spend too much time doing this. It should maybe be 1 or 2 sentences. It sometimes can start with the word while or though. So for example, one of the typical practice prompts about which vacation spot you would like to visit, a zinger for that essay prompt might look like this. While there are many vacation spots that I have liked, there is nothing better than a visit to the beach. So you can acknowledge that there are other places that you'd want to visit or other places that you've enjoyed, but you end that zinger with your thesis statement, with the place that you visited. Here's another list of the conclusion signal words or phrases that you can use, and you only want to use these in that conclusion paragraph. You don't want to use it as your wrap-up sentence in an earlier paragraph. This is to signal that your essay is wrapping up and it's all done. Here's one example of a conclusion paragraph. This is for a literary analysis essay based on the Hunger Games, and the students had to analyze whether or not their character was influenced or controlled by fear throughout the novel. So here's what this conclusion paragraph looks like. In summation, while Katniss is definitely brave and heroic, she is also influenced by fear. In the novel The Hunger Games, she was afraid throughout the novel, but specifically in main events such as the Reaping, when Rue dies, and when she and Peeta form the Suicide Pact to end the games. Though Katniss is afraid throughout the story, she harnesses this fear to accomplish great things. As Benjamin Disraeli says, fear makes us feel our humanity. So as you can see, in the beginning I started with the signal phrase in summation. I actually put my while but sentence as our first sentence. I acknowledge that though Katniss does have some excellent traits, that she is both brave and heroic, she's still pretty much scared throughout the book. Then my next sentence is my roadmap sentence, or my thesis statement and main reasons. I say that she was afraid throughout the novel, and then I mentioned the 3 events that I talked about: the Reaping, when Rue dies, and the Suicide Pact. My final sentence is my zinger, which does acknowledge that even though Katniss is afraid, she takes this fear to do good things with it. So it's not as if she is a meek or weak character. And then finally I end with a quote. You do want to be careful when you're ending with a quote. It needs to connect to what you said previously. It can't just be a random quote that is attached to your topic in some way. And for the writing SOL, you won't be able to use a quote because you can't use any outside sources. So you will want to practice writing zingers without using outside quotations. Here's another example. This essay prompt was analyzing whether or not Margot from the short story All Summer in a Day was or was not a hero. In short, while we may admire and sympathize with Margot, she is clearly not a hero. In the story All Summer in a Day, she never demonstrates the qualities of bravery, selflessness, or integrity that heroes such as George Washington represent. As Andrew Bernstein said, a hero must not be undefeated, but undaunted. But in this story, Margot is neither. I include or acknowledge the other side of the point in my first sentence after my conclusion signal word, that although we like Margot and we feel bad for her because a lot of bad stuff happens to her in the story, those things don't make her a hero. I restate my thesis statement here. She is not brave, she is not selfless, and she does not have integrity. Again, in this one, I end with a quote and acknowledge and end with the fact that Margot doesn't represent these things. Normally in class for this lesson, we would actually write a conclusion paragraph together. But instead, if you're watching this at home, feel free to write your own conclusion paragraph for this prompt and then bring it in to me and I can check it for you to make sure you're on the right track. Keep in mind, though, that when you are writing a sample paragraph, you still need to plan out that essay because you will still need a thesis statement and 3 main reasons, even if you're not writing your full essay. So with this prompt, this is an actual SOL prompt that you could get. Some people believe owning a pet is important, while others do not. Using specific details and examples to support your position, argue for or against owning a pet. Happy writing, and good luck.